So you might be wondering, what kind of data is right for a Hadoop solution? When I think about data, I think of two kinds of data. I think of what I call line of business data. Now, what does that mean? Line of business data is usually transactional, and actually it's not a good fit for Hadoop. As you might remember from the previous movie, transactional capability is not something that Hadoop is really designed to work with. And again, let me use that same example, which was taking two changes to a database, in the case of a bank account database, where you do a debit to your savings account and a credit to your checking account, and you roll those together as a transaction. That is your transactional data. Another way to think about it is any of your data that deals with making money, because usually you want transactions around that. What I find is that a lot of businesses have wrong information about Hadoop, and they think of it as a replacement for a relational database. And it really isn't. It's a supplement. Your line of business data is going to stay in your relational database. As an architect, I really haven't encountered any customers for whom they don't need some kind of relational database. Now, that being said, there is another kind of data, and that data is behavioral data. This is the world of big data projects. And let me make some examples of this. This is data that will be batch processed. So in other words, processed as a group rather than individually queried. And it is often a great fit for Hadoop. So some examples that I've worked with are around, for example, healthcare. We have more and more information being made available from the devices we wear, our Fitbits and our other kind of monitors. And it makes good sense to integrate that information with other types of solutions, like a medical records or medical diagnostics. Medical diagnostics would be kept in a line of business system because they'd be transactional. You'd want to know which prescriptions you took, and you don't want to have any data inconsistency there. However, your Fitbit behavior, for example, might be just very, very large, and you might just want to have that all added up or aggregated. And if you missed a Fitbit walk or two, it really wasn't that substantial. Because in the case of healthcare, when you're out walking and maintaining your fitness, that's going to be a behavior that happens, for example, every day, as opposed to visiting a physician, which hopefully doesn't happen very often, maybe once every 6 months. In addition to the volume of data, it's also the type of data. If the data is mission critical or line of business, you're really going to keep that in a relational database system. Behavioral data is a great candidate for Hadoop. So as an architect, when I think about the changing data landscape, this is a simplified diagram of the kinds of solutions that I've been building for customers. We take a look at their relational database systems, and there are often optimizations that we want to do before we begin a big data project, because you want to have a clean house in order of your relational data before you start something new. But notice the size of the circle for Hadoop. This is somewhat reflective of the amount of data that you'll be collecting. I know I just talked about a medical example. Here's another one. I've been doing some work in online education. Online education is really changing as it becomes browser-based, and you collect data around not only whether the student gets the answer right, but what the student does when they're working on the exercise in the browser. Think of different types of activities that a student would do. They would move their mouse, they would type something in a dialog box. All these activities can reflect how well the student understands the information and could be useful to the company that's creating the educational software. Now, I've included a circle for NoSQL because Hadoop itself is on a file system. And as we'll see when we get into the processing sections of this course, the processing of this volume of information can be really complicated. And sometimes it's helpful to put an abstraction layer on the top of it so that you can get actual usable information out of that big circle. And that is often NoSQL. Now, I purposely didn't draw any lines between these circles because sometimes the Hadoop information goes into a relational database, so some small subset of it, and then it's queried through relational methods. And sometimes it goes into a NoSQL database, and it's queried through NoSQL query methods. Sometimes actually just keep it in Hadoop, and you run these batch processes, and you take the output as usually aggregated text, and you take it from there. So there's all different methods of processing this data. But it is really important to understand that Hadoop is not a replacement for a relational database system. It's a supplement. And very often it comes with the need to also add a NoSQL system, which, yes, adds complexity. It's really critical to understand these two components when you're thinking about Hadoop solutions.